would like to welcome you to our webinar today. Today's discussion will be focused on the evolution of ransomware and threat response. The coronavirus pandemic has caused a major shift in how organizations connect and manage their workforces remotely. In some organizations, meeting this challenge haphazardly can expose critical infrastructure and data to malicious actors. A new wave of sophisticated ransomwares has swept the globe, taking advantage of this new threat environment, and have further complicated the task of protecting your vital data. To speak on this surge and how we can respond, we are honored to have with us today two experts in the field of cybersecurity and connectivity. First, I would like to introduce Mr. Nitin Varma. He is the Managing Director for India and the SAARC region at CrowdStrike, and a veteran in the technology industry with over 20 years of experience. Nitin has held multiple senior roles in leading IT companies, and one of his main directives is driving security transformations for customers and partners. Joining him is Mr. Valerian Rosino. Val has over 12 years of functional experience with providing a wide range of enterprise security and technology consulting services to clients in multiple geographies. As a seasoned risk practitioner, Valerian knows the information security threat vectors and understands how they operate. This has enabled him to design and deploy effective security strategies at many organizations. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. I hope lockdown has been manageable in your respective countries.
Hey, thanks, Ryan. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining us. This is Nitin here this side. Yep, so far living and trying to adapt to the new normal, what we say. Right.
The normal, I think, has got us all running around quite a bit with all the complexities it has brought to our work environment.
Absolutely, and I really wish that we would have done this event in Grand Cinnamon, where I'm so used to going and presenting out there to our customers. But yeah, the new normal has confined us to do it online, which is cool. Right. So yeah, I hope everybody is safe here, both physically and digitally as well. Look forward for an insightful discussion.
Definitely. Valerian, how about you? How are you doing this fine day?
I'm absolutely great, actually. I managed to go to the office first time after 4 or 5 months. So it feels good to get out of.
It must be an absolute relief to be able to get out of the house, right?
Absolutely, yes. Yes, it is. It is somewhat, somewhat great to be in the office.
So that being said, then, gentlemen, I say let's get to the discussion topic of the day: ransomware. Why is it on the rise?
Absolutely. I hope you're able to see my screen.
Yep.
So the topic today is a little bit heavy, right? But with every problem comes a solution. So what I'm going to try to do is go through what is the problem statement, why ransomware has evolved to be one of the major and significant threats today, and what are the main characteristics of these type of threats. And then subsequently, Nitin will go into the solution. What is the cure? How can we combat that ransomware activity in a successful way? The first thing that I feel is important to go through is, where does our intelligence come from? So where do we get these insights that I'm going to share with you today? So we believe that the attack starts on endpoint and ends on endpoint. This is where we can have the most insights about what is happening, in the world. So we have tens of millions of endpoints that are deployed throughout the globe in 180 plus countries. And all these data that are collected, which is unencrypted. The beauty of being on the endpoint is that we don't really care if the adversaries are using encrypted channels to communicate from an endpoint to their infrastructure, because we are sitting on the endpoint already. So whatever they are doing, we see it in clear. So all that data can be collected into our cloud, and we can analyze it. So we have hunters looking at it. We have threat intelligence analysts. We have malware reverser. So we have different functions looking at this tremendous amount of data and able to see trends, systemic events, things that are happening all over the globe. So it's very visual in that graph that we built in the cloud. We could see something trending in the Middle East, for example, and then subsequently moving into Asia, moving into Sri Lanka, moving into other countries that are your neighbors. So this is the power of the crowd, the power of the platform. And again, it is the best place to be on the endpoint to see how the attacks are being conducted. So if we talk about ransomware, I have to go through a bit of history. And today we are not talking just about ransomware. We talk about something that we call big game hunting. And I'm gonna explain that notion through this key timeline. So ransomware started quite a long time ago, 1989. So what happened then is there was a gentleman in the UK. What he did is he actually took floppy disks. So some of you, I'm sure, know what is floppy disks. But basically, he took floppy disk and he put some sort of virus, the first ransomware, on these floppy disks. He labeled them AIDS test result, and he mailed them to hundreds and hundreds of individuals. And that was somewhat, successful, but that was the first kind of case of ransomware that was sort of described in 1989. In the 2000, we have seen something called CROWDSTRIKE'S. So I'm not sure some of you have heard of it or not, but it was the first attempt to kind of build a piece of ransomware that is a little bit sophisticated to some extent, but that didn't really take off. There was no significant outcome from that campaign. The first time that it got really, really big is in 2013. CryptoWall, CryptoLocker, you have heard about this. This is the first time that something at scale happened. And at the time in 2013, what we observed is the cyber criminals were actually looking at targeting, very opportunistic, basically, targeting as many individuals as possible. And the important part here is we're talking about individuals. So it could be you, it could be me at home, it could be like very small businesses, but a very large spectrum of victims. And the payouts for that were quite low. It was like $50, $100. So they were more looking at how are they gonna do the money laundering, but that's how they behaved. Yet it was quite successful. Quite a number of victims were compromised, had their data encrypted, and had to sort of pay the ransom to remove the encryption. But then 2018 has marked a shift, and we actually named the cyber criminals at CrowdStrike the spiders. So at CrowdStrike, we use animal for our naming convention of threat actors. The bears are from Russia, the cholimas are from North Korea, the pandas are from China, and the spiders is a category for cybercrime. So any cybercrime will have a name that has spider in it. But what we observed in 2018 and beyond is that the cyber criminals actually found out that it is more lucrative to attack enterprises, to attack large organizations, because their ransom can be more significant. So they shifted from a very opportunistic campaigns to extremely targeted ransomware campaigns. So they leveled up their sophistication of their tools, and they're after enterprises. And the only reason is they have less volume, but the payout here could be millions. So they are ransom some big organization across the globe, and some made the headlines, and the ransoms are extremely significant. So we have that evolution of the ransomware threat landscape, and now this is what you're facing. So all of you joining us in that call, You are enterprises. So you are now the victims of the threat actors, of these cyber criminals. In the past, it was a bit different. It was more individuals, but now we all are the victims of the spiders. So why is it an issue? So if you look at the threat landscape in 2018 as opposed to 2019, in 2018, we had around 25% of the threats, the attacks that we were seeing that were cyber criminals, ECRIME. And in 2019, it was 61%. So we had a surge of ECRIME as opposed to state-sponsored. We had so many people that actually started, their ransomware campaigns because of its success. It is highly successful, and the entry bar is pretty low because there is a real ECRIME ecosystem to start with. So we have that shift that has happened from state-sponsored to ECRIME, and it's going to continue this way. In 2020, we have already seen a very, very large chunk of activity by the ECRIME group as opposed to state-sponsored. So this trend is going to continue this year and next year for sure. And this is happening for 3 reasons. First of all, they totally moved into something that it was opportunities to something that is very strategized. So they plan out how they're going to attack organizations. They test their ransomware. They have their own lab. They have their own way of testing out if the ransomware campaigns are going to be successful. They test their ransomware against traditional AVs because they have access to that. They procure traditional AVs because they're on-prem, and they test things out. So they really strategize their campaign to a point that they break it down into different pieces. They outsource, the development of the ransomware or the downloader or the stager, but it's extremely strategized. So they have a goal, and they are making everything possible toward that goal. The ecosystem is different today, and it's related to strategy. We have different actors specializing in different things in the ECRIME. Some are specialized into building the ransomware component itself that is going to be encrypting things. Some are actually specialized into how do you monetize all these? How do you run these campaigns? The ransomware as a service, how do you send the spear phishing campaign? How do you make sure you trick the user to click a link? So they chopped down the entire process into smaller bits, and we have different threat actors specializing in all these bits, but they are cooperating. That's what is the most scary thing. The threat actors in the ECRIME scene are cooperating between each other. So we have to do the same. As a defense, we have to do the same. We have to unite, because if we're united, we have a bigger chance to actually block them. And finally, the attack complexity. The traditional ransomware is gone. Now we have polymorphic malware that are evolving on their own. It's like a virus in the physical world. It's mutating on its own. So signatures are not able to detect it because it's mutating on its own. They are using custom compiled malware. They're using what we call living of the land, which is rather than using a piece of ransomware, a malware, they will write a ransomware using PowerShell, because PowerShell is available on all your Windows systems. They are using different mechanisms that are actually already available on the endpoints that are compromised, as opposed to write a malware that could be detected with some of your security controls. So the complexity has risen quite significantly in the pieces of attacks, the tradecrafts that are using. Then moving on to the ransom itself. If you take 2018, and if you take these 3 spiders group combined, so Indrik Spider, Grim Spider, and Boss Spider, it was totaling around $10 million of revenues through their campaign. In 2019, end of 2018 to 2019, if we take one single group, Wizard Spider, they have collected a total of 100 million. So we have times 10 in the ransom payouts that I have managed to get through, their Bitcoin and their virtual currencies. So definitely the strategy to move to the enterprise world has proven large success, and they are getting very, very, very large ransoms through their campaigns. The trends at a high level are the following. First of all, we have seen appearing for a couple of years now, ransomware as a service. So the entry bar to do ransomware is pretty low today. You can go in the dark web. It's going to take you, an hour to install a Tor client, go into a marketplace and purchase, ransomware components and bits and pieces that will help you to actually perform a ransomware campaign from its beginning to tracking its success. It's pretty impressive what you can buy for a pretty low, amount of money on the dark web. But this is how it is here today. Ransomware as a service is the norm. The second one is, back in the previous years, your data was encrypted, but that's it, right? You either pay and then you might recover your data or not, because sometimes it's not successful even after paying. But if you don't pay, your data is encrypted, you restore your backup probably, or you live with it, but that's it. What we are seeing today is that the threat actors are doing data extortion, which means some of the data that they encrypt, before encryption, they also send it to their cloud, to their infrastructure. And if you don't pay, they actually take that data and resell it on the dark web. Or for financial institution, what we have seen is they are actually contacting regulatory bodies and saying, look, we have the data of that specific financial organization. They have been compromised. So they are actually, doing that data extortion. And this is a completely new trend that we're only seeing for the last 1 year or 2 years. So it forces their victims to actually pay, because definitely the victims don't want to make the headlines and don't want to get tipped and somehow, have face consequences, financial, reputation, or whatsoever. And the last trend is they are multiplying. Because of the success of their activities, they are multiplying at a high speed. More success imply more cyber criminals. The ecosystem is there. The entry bar is there, is low. So we are seeing more and more and more cyber criminals. And a large, bulk of these criminals are actually from countries like Russia or Eastern Europe. And it's not uncommon to have some cyber criminals that are pretty successful bragging on the internet. There are some videos, some footages of some of these guys that are pretty famous, driving a Lamborghini and literally bragging about their extortion or their ransoms. So it brings new people again and again and again. So that is a trend that we are seeing. The cyber criminals are more and more prolific, and this is not going to stop because the success is high, and we got to stop that. So that's why we built the technology, we build services, we build threat intelligence to stop that, to combat that plague that we are seeing right now. So if we look at, again, we try to compare, years to really understand how we are moving and where we are moving. In 2019, there was still a large shift, a large portion of the ECRIME focusing on banking Trojan. And there was also a significant chunk on ransomware, but still a large number of these actors were focusing not on ransomware, but more on banking Trojan. And if we look at the groups that we were seeing at the time, we had Wizard Spider in 2019, a pretty popular group. Pinchy Spider is another one. Mummy Spider. So all these groups, are accessible in our threat intelligence portal, and you could read on, what they're doing. But this was the threat landscape of ECRIME in 2019. A balanced, spread of banking Trojan and ransomware. What we have seen though is because of the success of ransomware, a lot of groups actually transition to banking Trojan, from banking Trojan to ransomware. So they realize that there is more to make out of ransoms and all these campaigns. So they actually transition their entire activities from traditional trick bot, and all these banking Trojan that we know into ransomware. Because again, this is highly successful and the payouts are pretty juicy. So today, ransomware spread is rising significantly. So we have all these groups that are actually specializing in ransomware now, as opposed to in the past being on banking Trojan. Wizard Spider is a good example. We are tracking them since 2014. So 2014 was the first time we saw that organized group, very targeted, very motivated, and they were doing banking Trojans. Now they have entirely shifted their activities to ransomware because it is highly successful. We have seen other groups like Graceful Spider. They don't really do, the ransomware itself, but they're providing the infrastructure for other groups. So Wizard Spider, for example, is leveraging on Graceful Spider. So we call that gunfires, right? They are using other groups because these other groups are more specialized. It's exactly the same when you go to a trade show, you go to Black Hats, you go to RSA, you go to Gartner event or whatever it is. You are after the best of breed of security. They do the same. They go after the best of breed of the encryption, the ransomware encryption capability. They go they go to look for the best of breed of spear phishing campaign, the one that have built a reputation of domain, that have a high success rate of a user clicking on a link. So they are using that. They are doing exactly as we're doing, but in their cyber criminal world. So this is what we are observing in 2020. From a sectorial trend, we can see that some of these campaigns like Ryuk or Reveal are absolutely blasting, on all the different sectors and industry and verticals. But one trend that we're noticing is the financial sector is not as targeted as other sectors. And one of the hypotheses that we have is because the entry bar is higher, usually financial institutions have more security controls, have more layers that are protecting their infrastructure. So there is less success rate, basically. So we have seen a tendency for these groups to attack the financial organization a bit less as opposed to other industries that are a little bit more vulnerable. So this is one of the things that we have seen. But they are collaborating. So that trend can shift in a second, right? If they see a weakness in these banking environments, definitely they're gonna go after financial institutions as well. COVID-19, you might wonder, what is, the impact of COVID-19 and all that? We have seen an increase of 100x in, COVID-19 themes, malicious files from February to March. So this is significant. So actors, threat actors, they are smart, right? They know that everybody right now is talking 99% of the time about COVID-19. So they shifted, all their lore themes to that theme. So they are using COVID-19 lores, Word document, Excel document, PowerPoint document. They are registering domains, that are mimicking some like WHO, some typos. They are trying to blend into that trend, that systemic, that pandemics that we are seeing to increase their success rate. And, we are still in the middle of the crisis, so we're gonna see that trend, to continue, but be very, very vigilant about that. So on your gateways, Make sure you have a SOC advisory to your security team to absolutely pay attention to any COVID-19 theme email that is being exchanged with your employees, because that's how they disguise their attacks. So let's go a bit on a few assessments, and then I'm going to hand it over to Nitin to talk about how can we actually fight these guys successfully. So the way we brief threat intelligence at CrowdStrike is we have that concept of what, so what, and what next. So whenever we do threat intelligence briefing, if you were to be one of our threat intel customer, so we will tell you, here is what you need to know, basically. Here is what we are telling you. So how much do you care and why do you care? And what you should consider doing about it. So that's how we try to brief, the organizations that we're working with. So the first piece is the ransomware ecosystem. So like I said, the threat actors are specializing in their respective tradecraft, in the stager, in the downloader, in the spear phishing campaign, in the money laundry, in the dark web, whatever it is. They are specializing into all the things. So the marketplace is crowded, but we have very, very agile and very skillful actors, specializing in different parts of the puzzle. So what it means to you is we're gonna see more and more ransomware. New variants are gonna just pop up very easily because we have all these groups working toward the same goal and specializing and collaborating. So the development of a new ransomware variant is way faster now. So we have specialized R&D department on the cybercrime that are actually building new ransomware, finding new way to encrypt, using whatever is available on Windows, finding some libraries that are existing that can be used to be undetected. But the cycle of creating new ransomware is gonna increase, it's gonna speed up faster and faster. So you can expect more new variant of ransomware in the future. And the time to value as a consequence of that is gonna be significantly higher. So they're gonna be faster, swifter, and they're gonna be more successful if you don't take the proper action. Security controls, next-gen antivirus, threat hunting, knowing your adversaries, and some of the things that we're going to discuss in the second part of this webinar. So what we advise in that, ever-changing ransomware ecosystem is, it is more than ever critical that you actually understand what is happening with your peers. So collaboration between us is important, and that's why we build that platform as well. CrowdStrike. We believe in the power of the crowd. We believe in sharing telemetry, sharing data from endpoint, aggregating it into a single system to understand what is happening. And you got to do that at your level, right? With your peers in the same industry, with your third in your country, whoever it is. What are the bodies that you can collaborate with? But if you can do that, you're going to be more successful. The second thing is you got to have some help from machines, because there's so many new variants, so many new malwares. You have to automate things. You have to leverage on the new technologies, machine learning, artificial intelligence, behavioral analysis. And you have to start prioritizing the things that really matter. So you have to cut through the noise. If you have 1,000 alerts a day, you have to be able to triage and understand what are the few alerts that make sense in your environment that could, have dramatic impact in your environment. So this is how you get a chance to better survive this ransomware ecosystem. Then I wanted to talk about one group in specifically, Wizard Spider. Highly successful group, absolutely incredible. The last time we saw this group active was in April 2020. And they have different community identifiers. Some people refer to it as TrickBot, TrickLoader, the Trick, Ryuk, Anchor DNS, and they are originating from Eastern Europe and Russia. So they have different motivations, they have different strategies. Ransomware is one of them. but their success rate is absolutely phenomenal. And they are using nasty techniques across the board. But some of the things that we have seen that they do is, for example, they send a spear phishing email, and what they do is they're calling the users. So they're impersonating, maybe, you know, to be from the help desk or to be whatever, you know, scenario that sounds possible. And they just say the victim, okay, you just received an email. We just want to make sure everything is okay on your computer. We're going to send you, you know, I don't know, a remote assistance tool if you can install it, and then boom. So they are using a broad spectrum of techniques to make sure that their success rate remained very high. So this is very important to know about that. And this is something that CrowdStrike can provide you. Threat advisories, understanding the threats. So this group, for example, we have seen that in March 2020, they were using specific web injects in Italy, specifically leveraging on the COVID-19 pandemic. So whatever happened to Italy back in March, because right now we're seeing, you know, in the SARC region, we're seeing a surge of number of cases, is likely to happen in that region as well. So if you have that information firsthand, now maybe you will dissect how Wizard Spider is behaving. And if you can profile that threat actor, you can also tweak your security controls to be better equipped to detect and respond to that threat actor. So that is the power of the intelligence, power of knowing about your adversary. And the final note I wanted to have is on Maze ransomware. So Maze ransomware was first observed in May 2019, but somehow it was pretty hyped, you know, a couple of months ago. But what makes Maze ransomware very unique is that it contains anti-forensics. So it's a very complex piece of malware. They added some layers to confuse static analysis and to slow down, you know, the work of reversing team or, you know, antivirus that are building signatures. They really build a very complex piece of malware that has a lot of obfuscation, that has a lot of fake stuff, just to make it extremely hard for the defense, us, to actually, you know, build the mechanism to detect and prevent this kind of ransomware. So this is something that definitely you will see in the future, more and more complex ransomware having entire forensics, highly polymorphic, mutating on their own. So this is another trend that I wanted to highlight today. So I hope that throughout all these examples, you kind of picture, you know, the threat landscape you are evolving in. Big game hunting. They are targeting enterprises. They are looking at big payouts, and they are collaborating to be more successful. So the adversary you are facing is absolutely swift. They are fast and furious. The bears can break in your environment, the Russians, in 18 minutes and move laterally to another endpoint and sort of plant a ransomware. The North Korean can do that in 2 hours. The Chinese across the board in 4 hours. So think about it, even 4, 5, 9 hours is extremely quick. Imagine that from the time you receive an email and you click a link, 9 hours later, you have an adversary in your environment moving laterally and potentially planting ransomware across the board. So you gotta be equipped with a technology that allow you to outpace them, to be as fast as them, to see what they do in real time. And this is something that Nitin is gonna actually dwell on. But from a high level perspective, on a recommendation we have, from a threat intel perspective, not a technology here, we believe at CrowdStrike that knowing your adversary is absolutely critical. If you don't know your adversary, it's very hard to defend yourself because you don't know how they behave. You don't know why they are doing that. You don't know the tool they're using. You don't know their sophistication, where they are from. So it makes it extremely hard to actually defend yourself without knowing who you're fighting. So that's why we built a range of threat intelligence capabilities. So you have access to a threat intel portal and you can dissect what is the threat landscape that is relevant to you. if you are financial customer, if you are in telco, if you are whatever industry you are in, you will be able to see who are the actors likely to attack you. The third one here is threat hunting. We believe in threat hunting. We believe that machine and technology is absolutely critical, but having a human threat hunter behind you will be a tremendous help. They will hunt day and night in your environment and find anything that is outstanding or critical. And finally, services. We can help you rapidly respond to threats. We can do IR, we can do recovery service. You have a ransomware outbreak, we can help you, fix it, or at least kick the attacker out and make sure, they're not coming back. So moving from that, I want to leave you on these notes, and I really want to see and go through Nitin's session where we can talk about the cure. How can we actually solve that ransomware pandemics from the endpoint? Over to you, Nitin.
Thanks, Val. Thanks a lot.
Sorry, Nitin, just before you get started, I'd just like to remind everyone who has joined us here today that if you have any questions, please type them either in the chat window or in the Q&A box that is at the bottom of your screen. And at the end of Nitin's sessions, we'll get both Val and Nitin to answer any questions that you may have. Okay, Nitin, that's all I had to say. Please continue.
Perfect. Thanks, Val. Thanks a lot for your insightful session. You did manage to scare us all, for sure. So guys, good afternoon, everybody, once again, and totally appreciate you being here with us today. The problem statement was really big, trust me. I think the solution will be short, sweet, and simple. I'll try to make it short, sweet, and simple in here. So the next 15, 20 minutes, what I'm gonna do here is answer 3 questions, which is, why do we think we are failing today, right? What is that we need to do? And last but not the least, how CrowdStrike helps the customer, right? So let me jump on to say, why do we think we are failing? Okay, all right. Now, everyone today, all of us here today, I think I'm seeing almost about 90 odd people, right? In their respective organization, they would have their security checks and balances in place. What I mean by that is they would have the firewall, they would have the email security, they would have the antivirus in place. But still, a report from IDC says that breaches are happening everywhere. Every day, there is 1 organization out of 3 which gets breached. And to me, that's an understatement. So why is it happening here? What we believe, the reason why it's happening is because the attacks are getting sophisticated. Now, what I mean by that is the adversaries today have a nation state tradecraft at their disposal, which makes it very, very easier for them to get a foothold in the target environment. The second reason is the security environment, the security solution in respective enterprises are very complex. And the reason I say that is because as a practice over years, what we have done is for every new problem around security, we've just added a new layer to it, which not only has made the solution complex, but also undermined the security integrity within an enterprise. The last, which is a very universal fact for all of us, is there is a scarcity of skills in the market around security. And the skills that we have in our enterprise, we're still not sure. Are they doing the right things around security, or they still are busy taking logs, correlating it, and triaging alerts? The most important aspect, I think one of the main reasons that we are failing is that the entire industry today is focused on stopping malwares. But as per a report from CrowdStrike, a global threat report, what we have on an annual basis, and a recent report from Verizon, DBIR, what we call it, the attacks, the 51% of attacks are non-malware attacks in here. These are fileless attacks using live of the lands or using trusted tools like PowerShell. Now, if you had to ask a customer to stack rank, what does he prefer? To stop malwares or to stop breaches? While both are important, the obvious answer is to prevent breaches. But that's what matters in an enterprise. Because even if you are able to stop 100% of malwares in your environment, you still are blindfolded for that 51% of attacks which are non-malware attacks. So that's a few reasons that I believe, and we believe together as CrowdStrike, the reasons why we are failing and the attacks are on a rise today. Now, having said the why, let's jump on to what is that we should do in our respective environments in here around security. Now, before I say anything about this is what we should do or lay down some guiding principle, I think it's very important for all of us to define, redefine what security should mean to us. If you ask an OEM like me, I think probably we'll say it means technology. It means an architecture. It means a platform. We call it a platform. But from your perspective, security has to be an outcome. And there are only 3 outcomes possible in a security environment when you build a framework. The first one is prevent. For decades, I think we've been using a first prevention or a prevention first approach, wherein we are trying to prevent all the attacks that are happening in an environment. But with the threat evolving landscape, and I think validated by many third parties, it's impossible today for any technology or algorithm to prevent 100% of attacks. And that is what gave rise to detection, or EDR, what we call it, to be able to understand what has been missed by the technology, the prevention, right, and take care of that. The third outcome, which I really want to touch upon, and I think nobody talks about that, Val kind of alluded to it, is to be able to predict an attack in your environment. And what I mean by that is to be able to understand, learn from the attacks we are preventing, and also build an intelligence system in our security framework so that we are able to understand the tools, the techniques, the tactics, the process, the goals and the motive of the adversaries who are very, very persistent, and hence able to predict the attack that are about to happen in our enterprise. So that's I think once we have defined these 3 outcomes, it's also very important for us to measure these outcomes. Yeah. Now I'll just go back to what Val kind of mentioned in one of his slides, talking about the breakout time. And I think you also kind of stack rank different adversaries. The top 5 adversaries out of 140 that we track globally, right? That they are, I think the fastest one was the bear, which kind of has a breakout time of 18 minutes. Now, what is a breakout time? Breakout time is a time when an intrusion becomes a breach. It's a time when the adversary is able to make that first infection in a victim's organization to the time he starts moving laterally, gaining persistence, privilege escalations, credential access, so on and so forth. And it is after this point when it becomes really difficult, nearly impossible for the good guys, for the defenders, for people like yourself to be able to contain this, and hence results in a breach. Now, CrowdStrike, I think basis our IR engagement with many, many customers, came out with a metric, came out with a rule, what we call as 110 in 60, which lets you stay ahead of the adversary, because agility and speed are the 2 imperative things if we need to survive in this ever-evolving dynamic threat environment. Now, what does this rule say? It says that you should be able to detect a threat in 1 minute, investigate and formulate a response in 10 minutes, and remediate it from the environment in about 60 minutes or so. Now, let me try and break it down for better understanding. For us to be able to detect a threat in 1 minute, I think we need to apply leading technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning at scale. We need to make that shift from indicator of compromise, which is a reactive way, to indicators of attack. Last but not the least, I think we cannot scale if we are still dependent on on-premise solution. We all know they are crippling down in this ever-evolving threat environment today. So we need to have leading technology like cloud-native architecture. To be able to detect a threat and formulate a response in 10 minutes, we need to have EDR, endpoint detection response, which is basically giving a real-time 100% visibility of each and every process that is happening in your environment. It should be seconded by military-grade threat intelligence, which Val kind of touched upon, to be able to understand the adversary, to be able to predict an attack. And a 24/7 proactive managed threat hunting is what is required for us to formulate a response, investigate in about 10 minutes. For us to be able to remediate and contain in 60 minutes. I think the key to success is to have a cloud-based remote device management so that we are able to see all the endpoints on a real-time basis, whether it's in the premise or whether it's offline. Good preparedness in terms of tabletop exercises, in terms of playbooks, which kind of guides the stakeholders what to do in case of an attack. And obviously nothing succeeds than good communication and good business processes, wherein there is I think a clear communication between security and the business stakeholders. So these are the rules, this is the matrix from which you can measure. And trust me, if you are able to achieve this 1-10-60 rule in environment, I can tell you we are totally secure. It's a difficult metric to achieve, trust me on this. Yeah? And this is not something that we have devised as come out of as a jargon, right? I just want, and I'll leave you 10 seconds to consume this recommendation that came out by Gartner in their critical capabilities, endpoint critical capabilities report in October 2019, which kind of gives us some of the guiding principle, what you should look at from an endpoint security perspective. All right. So now since we have spoken about why do you think we are failing, what is that we should do? I think let's talk about how CrowdStrike helps the customer in stopping breaches in the environment. And like Val said, keeping them away from headlines. I think one of the guiding principles, right, or mission that we are at is to stop breaches. We as a company don't have any vision statement. We have a mission statement, which is we stop breaches. And this is the philosophy. This is the mission because of which every employee of CrowdStrike comes to work or joins work nowadays, everyday basis. All the innovations, all the enhancements are aligned to this overriding principle of stopping breaches. And this is not something that we show on a slide and just a sales jargon in here, but we kind of very confident in saying that we are stopping breaches for our customer. And we say this with a lot of confidence, a lot of good work that has gone in the last 10 years or so since the time we have existed. In fact, one of our suite called Falcon Complete offers a 1 million breach prevention warranty. Yeah? So let's look at why are we so confident? What is the key source? What is the winning formula for us? The winning formula, I think something that you might hear from many OEMs in here is that you should embed people, process, and technology, right, from a security perspective. What we have done, the three pillars, the three key legs of our platform is expertise, which are the people. Intelligence, the process of pervasively integrating intelligence to our platform. And last but not the least is groundbreaking technology. So we use people, process, and technology to guard you, to stop breaches in our platform. Right, so let me just kind of touch upon very, very briefly in the paucity of time, right, on each one of them, starting with technology in here. So CrowdStrike has pioneered a new approach of endpoint protection using our Falcon platform. Our Falcon platform is 100% cloud native. The cloud basically eliminates the problems, the complexity associated with implementation, management, and tuning of endpoints. So with cloud, you don't have to worry about signature, updates, scanning, so on and so forth. Cloud also ensures that you're able to consume the latest innovations, the latest enhancement, so that you are staying ahead of any new threat that are coming up in the cybersecurity arena. Now, within the cloud, there lies our proprietary threat graph. Threat graph, I think CrowdStrike Threat Graph is one of the most powerful analytical engine in cybersecurity world today. Threat graph basically ingests, indexes, and analyzes trillions of events every week. I think the last that I read about, we analyze about 3.5 trillion events every week in here, leveraging artificial intelligence, machine learning, data analytics to detect sophisticated threats in any environment. Now, whenever we encounter a new threat, and like Val mentioned, collaboration, CrowdStrike, crowdsource, right? So whenever we encounter a new threat, we are able to pass it on or collaborate on a real-time basis with all of our customers. Every new threat detected or every event that is ingested in threat graph makes our threat graph much more smarter, much more effective in preventing, detecting, speeding up investigation and threat hunting. And as a philosophy, we do all of these through a single lightweight agent or sensors that we call it, which is able to protect any kind of attack, whether it's a known attack or an unknown attack. You can consume all the modules, and I'll talk about it, all the modules of CrowdStrike without getting the agent bloated. It will still remain a lightweight agent of 35 Mbps, having 1% CPU utilization. Now, the sensors or the agent is able to capture high fidelity data using our proprietary smart filtering technology. And this works across different workloads. It's not only confined to PCs or desktop, but it works across the workloads, which is cloud workloads, containers, across the OS, which is Mac, Windows, Linux, so on and so forth. So that's what a little just about technology that we're using. And then comes, all right, okay. All right. Now as a process, I think, like I said, we have managed to integrate or pervasively integrate threat intelligence. Now, the power of this platform, the CrowdStrike platform, gets unleashed, unlocked with the world-class threat intelligence, which has been a cornerstone of our approach right from day one of our existence. Because we believe, and I think Val also alluded to that, that it's very, very important for us to understand our adversary. Because if you don't understand, if you don't know the adversary, how will you strategize and defend against them? Intelligence is deeply woven into our platform. It enriches everything that we do today. And this intelligence is derived from not only the threat researchers, but also the proactive threat hunters who are hunting for threats in that huge threat graph, I think 15 petabytes of threat graph in there, and also the professional services team. We are, I think these teams are into a 24/7 hand-to-hand combat with the adversary on a real-time basis. I think like Val mentioned, we track about 140 adversaries group across the globe today. Yeah. As a process, I think we have worked really hard in terms of pervasively, like I mentioned, pervasively integrating, automating, and orchestrating the threat intelligence to our platform in there. So as to tell you, what are the attacks that are targeted toward your industry? What are the attacks that are targeted towards your organization so that you are able to rapidly investigate and respond to those threats? I think while other people can talk about prevention or detection, remediation, to the best of my knowledge, we are the only one who talk about predicting an attack. Building that intelligence system by learning from the past attack, like I mentioned, and being proactive by understanding the adversaries, their TTPs, techniques, tools, and processes. And this doesn't end here. I think CrowdStrike has really managed to pioneer, to embed the live experts, the real-time people, so as to stop the sophisticated and stealthy attacks. We work, I think this team today works hand in hand with your team as an extension for your team in trying to eradicate the sophisticated threats, the stealthy attacks in your environment today. Our Overwatch or the managed threat hunting works relentlessly 24/7 in trying to find out the stealthy attacks, the sophisticated attacks, which has kind of bypassed the algorithms, which has bypassed the automation in your environment and works as an extension of your team to protect you from these stealthy attacks in there. In addition to that, we offer managed endpoint protection, where we say we take, I think our experts will manage, remediate the entire endpoint protection for your organization in there. And this is what we call Falcon Complete, which is backed up by a breach prevention warranty of $1 million. And very proudly and humbly that we say is, we've never been able to kind of revoke this warranty ever so far. Right? And the tip of the spear is the services team, the professional services team, which engages with our customer on a reactive basis, doing incident response, and also kind of looking at advisory services so as to enhance the maturity of security in your organizations. Yeah. So our unique combination of intelligence, expertise, and technologies comes together in form of a comprehensive security platform around endpoint security. Right? We offer various modules, right, in our platform, and we have categorized in 3 different categories. The first one is endpoint security. By leveraging the best-in-class AI and machine learning and behavioral analytics, we are able to provide you world-class EDR, NGAV, firewall management, and device control. And the protection is not only confined to the traditional workloads in there. We are able to provide you 100% visibility on the cloud workloads as well, on the cloud environment as well, right? Offering you a runtime protection, which makes it easier for you, or which helps you protecting breaches and eradicating the complexity in your cloud environment as well. From a security and IT operations standpoint, we offer you IT hygiene, vulnerability management, managed threat hunting, which is the Overwatch, and the turnkey security, which is the Falcon Complete. And last but not the least, it is all enriched by the world-class threat intelligence, where we have malware search and malware analysis, which kind of gives a deep context and a predictive ability to the platform and helps able to predict any attack that is happening. And we do all this through a single lightweight agent, right? Irrespective of which all modules that you choose, the footprint of the agent will remain 35 to 40 Mbps. One agent, one console, one CPU across the workloads, whether it's Windows, Linux, Apple, Android, iOS, whether it's any kind of multi-cloud environment, whether it's AWS, GCP, or Azure. Right? Now, some of the validations, I just want to kind of touch upon this. Some of the validation that we have received from third party, which is Gartner in this case, right? We are on the leaders quadrants of Gartner for the last 2 years, right? Both in the EPP and the EDR perspective. While we have got, I think, validation from leading analysts, both in the EDR and the EPP category from Gartner, Forrester, or IDC, I think we have been tested and validated and proven to provide the best protection from different testing organizations like AV Comparatives, SE Labs, or MITRE. I think in the Gartner Peer Insights, I think we are the highest with 4.95 score, 4.7 out of 5 score in there, right? So why CrowdStrike? Because it improves your protection. It gets you immediate value in terms of deployment from the time you buy it. It has embedded live expertise who are acting as your extended team. And last but not the least, it reduces complexity in your environment. But always remember the 1-10-60, because every second counts. And this is the metric that we should follow to measure security efficacy in our environment. Thank you. And I'll pass it on to Ryan for any question.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nitin. We've had a couple of questions, I think, come in during the sessions. Is there anything else I think that you'd like to share with our attendees before we get into the Q&A session?
No, I think the only thing I want to share is please ask questions. That's the only thing I would want.
So basically, I think what Nitin is saying is whatever you would like to ask from him, please feel free.
Around security. And we have the expert. We have Val in there.
So we actually have a couple of the questions that came in. Why don't we start with one of those? We have here, what further threat protection can you do with CrowdStrike in terms of an on-premise firewall or other security devices?
Sorry.
So we act on the endpoint, right? We are an endpoint delivered prevention platform. So whatever we deliver, whether it's next-gen AV, EDR, managed threat hunting, vulnerability inventory, which is scanless, IT hygiene, host firewall, is on the endpoint. So specifically to that question, we can deliver host firewall capability where from a single console, you will be able to triage your alerts, remediate your alerts, look at your vulnerabilities, add firewall rules from a single workflow.
So I think
that's on the host.
So that means any kind of any intelligence that CrowdStrike can throw out, can it then be digested by other devices such as firewalls?
Absolutely, absolutely. Through our store or through our integration partnerships, you could have indicators, CrowdStrike indicators being shared to third-party application. I mean, we have some integration with SIEM, for example. We have integration with proxies. I mean, think of like Zscalers and some of these application with email gateways. So definitely there is some integration because the API is pretty rich, so the intelligence can be shared to your existing investment.
Superb. So I think this is a bit of a more of a general question that has come in. So how does a next generation antivirus like Falcon compare with more traditional antivirus providers that, well, let's not name the big name, shall we? How do we compare against legacy antivirus?
So we have a layered approach, right? First of all, when we started CrowdStrike, I mean, when the founders started CrowdStrike in 2011, we were already observing that signature-based legacy antivirus were not working. There is no way that signature can cope with the volume of attacks that we have today, because signature looks at what it knows. But every single day, you have 1 million new malware. How could you write 1 million signature every day? It just doesn't work. Not to mention that malware now evolve on their own, what we call polymorphic. So what our approach at CrowdStrike is multi-layered, multifaceted. So we have 3 engines. First of all, we do machine learning. Machine learning has proven far more success than signature, because machine learning doesn't need to know the file to convict it as malicious. It looks at the characteristics of the file, the DNA of the file, and take a decision based on that. We were the first machine learning engine to be introduced in VirusTotal in 2016. So we have been working on that machine learning capability for the last 5 to 6 years. So it's battle tested, it's field tested. The first layer, machine learning. Second layer, behavioral analysis. We look at the behaviors of all the processes that are running on the endpoints. If PowerShell, if Adobe Reader, if Outlook, if Microsoft Office starts to behave in a weird way, for example, why would Adobe Reader inject code in memory? Why would they do that? Why would they tamper the registry? Why would they connect to some websites that are not Adobe? So all these behaviors are actually analyzed. And when a process crosses a threshold or cross a behavior that it's not supposed to do, then we just prevent it. And the third one, which is critical in the way we think at CrowdStrike, is our managed threat hunting. By that, I mean that if you subscribe to our service, then we extend your security team with 100 threat hunters. They're gonna look at what's happening in your environment in real time, day and night. And whenever there is something that is suspicious, but too benign for technology to pick it up, then they're gonna notify you, raise an alert on the console, or send you an email, or call you. It's absolutely critical. But we can extend your security team with the best hunters on the planet. And it makes a difference because they have seen millions of attacks. They have seen what happened in thousands of customers. They have seen the same, the PowerShell attacks, thousands of variants of the same PowerShell attack. So they know how to recognize threats, and they can, complement your team.
Okay, thank you very much for that answer. I think we have a bit of a follow-on question from that. The question is, can a user or a customer have an on-prem server, and how would that affect the security?
Sorry, say that again. I had a.
Can a customer have an on-prem server running CrowdStrike?
No. So we're fully cloud delivered, and the reason is pretty simple. In a week, we collect more data than WhatsApp in a year. So in order for us to do the behaviors analysis, the correlation, and all these processing that we do, there is only the cloud, that can offer that capability. If you were to do what we do on-prem, you would need an entire data center just for you for delivering what we do. Also, by having a cloud delivered solution, we can correlate things. We can see, literally visually see in our graph database, systemic things happening. We can see when WannaCry happened, it's just flashed all our thread graph with things lining up in all the parts of the world. So we can do that correlation, and then we can do that correlation per industry, and then we can do the correlation per technique, and we can disseminate that knowledge into new roles or new protection. But there is only one way to provide what we provide, and it's through the cloud.
I see. All right, thank you. We have, I think, a bit more of a follow-on question from that one. Since everything is cloud-based, what happens to the security logs? Are they stored, or are they hosted on the cloud, or?
Absolutely. So we call it telemetry. So the industry is referring to technical activity on the endpoint as telemetry. Technical telemetry, which is a process is starting. It's gonna leave a record of that process starting. The registry is modified, the plan tasks are created, the services are created. I mean, whatever happens on the endpoint is collected, but it's technical metadata. We don't collect files. We don't inspect the content of files. We just look at trails or records of operating system activity, let's put it this way, operating system activity on what is running and what is happening in Linux or Mac OS or Windows. Mm-hmm. And it is stored in the cloud, absolutely.
Brilliant. So coming on from that, we have one more question here. He is asking, sorry, let me understand this question properly. Oh, right. Sorry. It was a small definition question. One of our attendees have asked, what is exactly meant by human threat hunting?
So hunting is a bit of a bastardized word these days, right? Commoditized. So everybody is doing hunting. So some people are even saying we are doing AI hunting, automated hunting. There is no even a human. It's just happening. So this is a dream, because what we're seeing is attackers are behaving exactly like your administrators. Absolutely exactly. You use RDP, they use RDP. You use SSH on Linux, they use SSH. You use a VPN, they steal your VPN certificates, they connect through VPN. They use PowerShell, they use WMI. Whatever you use, they use it. So when you're seeing this activity, if you're not a trained hunter, it's extremely difficult to distinguish PowerShell being used by the attacker or PowerShell being used by the administrator. Same for RDP connection. Is that RDP and the subsequent activity legit or not? And having a hunter that has 12 years of hunting experience make a significant difference, because they have seen it. They have seen how these actors are behaving, these hackers are behaving. We have seen it so many times that we have codified it, and we have a knowledge sharing practice, so we know about it. So we can extend the team to provide that expertise.
So I think what you're saying is here, you bought the best from around the globe under your roof, so that any end user and customer doesn't have to hire those technical skills in order to have that type of protection.
Absolutely. If you would like to build that capability, you would need to be 24/7 and different corpus of functions. You need malware reverser, you know, threat hunters, you know, threat intel analysts. You would need around 8 full-time equivalents with 12 years of experience. So if you can hire that, I mean, that number of people, 8 hunters or malware reverser or threat intel analysts that have 12 years of experience, you could build that on top of Falcon. Because at the end of the day, the data that they use is the data collected by Falcon. It's just that we operationalized it and we have a learning system, we have expertise.
Got it. This is a bit more on the infrastructure side, right? What can CrowdStrike do to help tighten up existing infrastructure? And a small client question, and does CrowdStrike have any clients in the hospitality industry?
So you want to take that one, Nitin? Hospitality?
Val, do you want to take the infrastructure question and then Nitin can take the hospitality one?
Yeah, sure. So on the infrastructure, okay, can you rephrase that for me? Is it?
So how does CrowdStrike help to tighten up the existing security infrastructure or the existing network or connectivity infrastructure?
So multiple ways to think about it. First of all, the next gen AV, EDR, and threat hunting will raise the bar of your security. We will point the finger to what matters in your environment. Immediately, if a hacker lands in your environment, we will surface that and show you the smoking gun and help you to remediate it. But then we also help all our organizations to identify security gaps, to identify avenues of attacks and close these avenues. So we do vulnerability inventory, for example. Same agent is performing scanless inventory of vulnerabilities. So you know who is still vulnerable to Eternal Blue, who has Curveball, who has that CV, SMB CV from Microsoft or whatever. You have that visibility. How many critical servers have a vulnerability? So you can answer this question with the same single agent. We also do IT hygiene, which means that we look at what are the applications running in your environment, what are the accounts, and what are the assets. Applications give you a good understanding of what are people running. Are people using cracked applications? Are people using non-compliant software? Why would people start to use, I don't know, torrent clients? So you can have an understanding of what is running in your environment and blacklist them, or have some awareness training to users that they're not supposed to do that or whatever. We do the same for accounts. We tell you how many local accounts you have, how many domain accounts, when were the password resets, is it a month, is it a year, is it 2 years, is it 10 years? If you have domain accounts where the password was not reset, in the last 2 years, this is a critical risk, because if the password gets cracked or stolen, then the attacker can use that for years. So we're gonna surface all these findings and you can actually fix them. And if you fix them, you raise the bar, you close these avenues, which means it's harder for the attacker to compromise you. So definitely every single customer that has onboarded with CrowdStrike has stepped up their practice. They are better at triaging, they are faster at responding, and they don't need to reimage their host all the time. They do surgical remediation and they are back on business very quickly. So this is the promise, of the Falcon platform.
Got it. Thank you very much for that answer. So Nitin, do you want to take the hospitality industry question there?
I'll just give you a little perspective about what kind of customers have gone ahead, the top customers have gone ahead with CrowdStrike. So out of the Fortune 100 companies, I think 44 of them, till about 5 months back, were on CrowdStrike. The top 37 global companies out of 100 are on CrowdStrike. From a healthcare perspective, the 5 customers, top customers out of 10 are on CrowdStrike. Now from a hospitality, I'm assuming it's hospitals or the hotels, right? I think I can give a little just about idea about India though. if not globally right now, and I can come back to you. I think the top few hospitals or the hotels in India are on CrowdStrike. I can give that perspective right now, but from a global perspective, I can come back to you on this.
Okay.
You can you can look at Marriott. Marriott is a CrowdStrike customer. It's public. It's their references on internet. They got an award actually in 2019 from CrowdStrike because of their ability to. They had a very complex environment, as you can imagine, hospitality, and they managed to deploy to roll out very quickly, and it was a very clean process, and right away they had visibility, detection, and prevention. This is one example. For the others, we usually have a policy where we don't tell you customer names because that decision doesn't belong to us. If they want to be publicly saying that they're using CrowdStrike, that is their right, not really our rights to say that. Mm-hmm. But this one is a public reference. Yeah, you can see it on the internet. You can search for it.
Okay, very nice. We have another question coming here. Let me try and understand this correctly. So what's being asked here is now if a ransomware attack hits a critical piece of infrastructure like your servers or etc., right? What are the immediate measures that can be taken, or what will CrowdStrike do if you have it already on your devices, right? And in line with that, how can lateral movement within an infected device be prevented? After an intrusion be prevented?
So machine learning happens during the pre-execution phase, which means it's not even running. It's not even loaded in the memory. So if machine learning, the model is recognizing that as a threat because it has been trained to do so for the last 6 years, we have bombarded our model with billions of samples, and it's trained to recognize ransomware, but other threats. It's just gonna quarantine it right away. It's never gonna run. Behavioral analysis require a little bit more time to actually take a decision. But when I say more time, I'm talking about, 1/10 of a second maybe. So a ransomware, the way it works is it executes on a system. It enumerates your files, your video, your favorite pictures, your documents. It's deleting the backups, and it's loading encryption libraries to do the encryption. So we codify the behavior of a ransomware, the DNA of a ransomware, and we can detect that very quickly. So when you run it, it's gonna start to enumerate things. It's gonna delete the shadow copies. It's gonna load encryption libraries. All these behaviors, we can actually block them. We can see them, block them. So in most cases, we will be able to just block it before it does anything, any encryption. I mean, that's the end goal anyways.
Absolutely. Sorry, we got one more question. Well, we have a couple more questions here. We'll get through them before we finish off here. So the question is about sandboxing. Now, is network sandboxing still a valid security strategy these days?
I would say it doesn't harm for sure, but we believe that you can do more on the endpoint. Network sandboxing, there is one big elephant in the room is, are you doing SSL decryption? If not, I have a bad news. 90% of the attacker's traffic is encrypted. So you will be blind to pretty much everything. If you are SSL decryption, it might be to some extent useful, unless the anti-evasion techniques are getting more and more sophisticated. So we believe that being on the endpoint is superior because the sandbox is the endpoint. We are on the endpoint, we see what's happening. When it's executed, we run machine learning, we run behavior analysis, we have hunters. So you can think of it as a network of multi-million sandboxes. That's CrowdStrike in a way. And we have all these little sensors recording what's happening, and this feeds into this super brain that take the decisions to detect, to prevent, or to surface the activity.
Got it. Moving on from that one, we have one more question here that's asking if they have CrowdStrike already, do they need a separate whitelisting or blacklisting application to work in conjunction with it?
We don't do application control. What we can do is blacklisting. So if you observe an application that you don't want to run, you can actually blacklist the application, blacklist the hash of that application. So when you combine it with the application inventory we do, you have that workflow where, oh, there is a destroying client, blacklisted. Oh, I don't want my user to use TeamViewer, blacklisted. But our workflow is pretty self-sustainable and you can use that. But when it comes to collect the hash of all the files in the system and do whitelisting in a broader sense, we are not going to provide that, but we can do it through partners. So our partner of choice is Airlock Digital, and we are working with them. So you can deploy their whitelisting agent through CrowdStrike. So it's pretty seamless, and there is bidirectional integration, like a hash that we collect is shared with them. We enrich it with threat intelligence and so on and so forth. But that would be the best approach.
Got it. Okay, we have, I think, time for one final question here. Given the work from home environment that we're all facing here today, right? How does CrowdStrike help to align with all these new remote connections? Is it easier deployed even if someone is still stuck at home? How can it be deployed in that manner? And finally, if an organization or infrastructure is breached, how can CrowdStrike help?
I'll take the first one, and maybe you can take the second one. But work from home, I mean, it hasn't had a single impact on CrowdStrike in different ways. So on us, right, or our ability to hunt. So our virtual SOC has been hunting before work from home, during work from home, after work from home. So we were, created to work in an environment where we could be anywhere. We can hunt from anywhere. We can deliver our service from anywhere. So there was no impact on CrowdStrike. That's one. The fact that it is cloud delivered allows us to support our customers regardless of the nature of the way they work. We protect our customers when they're on-prem. We protect them when they're at home. We protect them when they're roaming, when you are in a plane with Wi-Fi, when you're at Starbucks. We protect them. We protect the cloud workloads. If your servers are in the cloud, if you are using containers, if you are using whatever it is in the cloud, we protect that. So work from home is for us business as usual. We can protect anybody that is working in that fashion.
So let me kind of add to it, Rian, what Val said. I think from a deployment perspective, I think the question was more around deployment in here. So I think this pandemic time with the work from home environment has actually exposed the challenges of legacy signature-based agents in there, antivirus in there. Since I think we are cloud-based, we don't require signatures. We don't require the data to be updated on a regular basis in here. I think that is one of the key challenges that you will face when you're applying legacy or a signature-based environment, signature-based antiviruses from a work from home environment in here. That's one. The second thing, how can CrowdStrike help if somebody unfortunately has been breached in here? So I think I mentioned in the services aspect, right, that we engage reactively with many of our customers, and incident response is one of the most lucrative businesses, if I might say that, for CrowdStrike, right? We started as a speech investigation company when we started off, right? So I think today with the power of the forensics that we do, I think with the expert that we have around incident response, I think we are able to kind of investigate and remediate that breached environment for our customers. And there have been many cases where we've been reactively engaged and then they have shifted to CrowdStrike. I hope I answered that.
Okay.
Yep.
I think that should cover most of what we need for the moment. Gentlemen, I think we've just about come to the end of our time today. If there are any more questions, I'll keep the chat open for another 2-3 minutes.
What we can do is we're going to collect all the questions and aggregate them and answer to all of you that asked these questions.
Correct. So we'll collate any of these questions and kind of share it with the video once that gets uploaded. Of course, if you do have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to any of the partners that you work with, or South Asian Technologies, are the gentlemen who handle CrowdStrike are Ryan Kern, Kyle Hydermani, and Dylan Pereira. So you can get any of your questions answered at any time. And of course, if they can't answer those questions, they'll of course connect either Val or Nitin, and they should be able to answer any questions that you have. Well, Nitin, do you want to leave our attendees with any final thoughts before we sign off?
No, I think I'll again really appreciate, on the bottom of the heart, I think I want to thank you for staying with us, sparing time from your busy schedule, for giving us an opportunity to listen to us, what CrowdStrike, does for you and how it helps you solve the security problems around you. So just be safe, be in touch with us, right? Whenever you think, I think you need to reach out, the SAT team is right there. You can reach out to them. I think they can connect us together. But more than keen to work with all of you again. That's what I would say. So be safe, be healthy, guys.
Okay. Val, any last thoughts?
I would say, you can listen to me or Nitin, or you can make your own judgment, right? So I would really invite all of you, if you want to test us out, we are more happy to do so. You can just, contact SAT or myself or Nitin, or go on our website. There is a free trial that is available for 15 days. Just, put your name, your email, and we will contact you. You can deploy it in hundreds of systems if you like, and start to test it out. So we really believe into being battle tested. I think that is something that we are pretty proud of. We give our solution to, IV tests, AV comparatives, MITRE, whoever wants to test it, because we build that technology and we believe that it's successful. So feel free to test us out, and I'm more than happy to help you throughout the testing.
Perfect. Gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing your time and your experience.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for being an amazing host. Thank you.
Thank you. It was very
Thank you,
informative.
everybody. That was a pleasure.
All right.
Bye-bye.
To all our attendees, thank you very much for being here with us, and have a very good evening and a safe trip home. Thank you and goodbye.